Joining us on Job Seeker Nation. Welcome. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. And if you're joining us for the second time or more, welcome back. We come here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central, to bring you job search news and career news and what that means for your job search. And hopefully, you can leverage whatever information or whatever you can glean out of here and take advantage of this for your job search. As always, my co-host is Jack Kelly, senior career contributor at Forbes, as well as the man of the hour, man of the power at recruiter.io. How are you, sir?
Good, my friend. Good. And it's glad to see you, Isaac. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good to be here.
Sure.
Thanks for the
And watch,
invite.
yes. And Isaac, could you please pronounce your whole name and
Sure.
tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Dr. Isaac Adai, Chief Strategy Officer at Pivot Tech School, former computer engineer, former college business professor based in Nashville, Tennessee.
Good deal. Good deal. And you've got a lot of things going on to help the communities, especially those who are Black and upcoming and want to learn more about tech. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. So at Pivot Tech School, we essentially empower individuals that are seeking to break into tech, seeking to get a tech job. We do that through
Mhm.
20-week virtual programs in cybersecurity, data analytics, and web development. And our target market is people of color that are wanting to transition from a different career into a tech career to increase their earning potential.
Good deal. Now, is that you're helping mostly young and up and coming, or can older workers and those who might be wanting to transition might be able to be a part of that as well?
Yeah, great question. We've actually attracted mostly adult learners, to be honest with you.
Really? Huh.
We
Hmm.
haven't tapped into that college market or early college grad market yet. I think it's how
Hmm.
we've positioned ourselves from a marketing perspective. But there are people who are in a career, maybe education, maybe in another service based industry, and they've hit that salary wall and they want to do something different. And they're reading all this
Hmm.
content about the demand for tech talent and how companies are struggling to find it. And so that's been our sweet spot. So the majority of the people that have been in our programs already have a degree and already have been working in another career field.
Mm.
So it's
So, are
interesting.
you getting I was going to ask, are you getting a lot of teachers and nurses who are leaving their professions and start to
You know what?
migrate
We
to
have
something else
had
like
some
that?
people. Yeah, we have had a few educators. We also have had a few healthcare folks. I wouldn't say
Hmm.
that's not the majority of our audience, though. It's a pretty diverse
Okay.
audience. Some entrepreneurs that are looking to transition. We even have had some people that are already working in the tech industry, but are wanting to level up from a career perspective to be more attractive for opportunities within their existing organization. So it's been a pretty diverse mix. Because we are now doing some work with the SNAP program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, we have a
Hmm.
very different demographic of individuals that are just getting their career started, and they're coming in and they're taking some of the light versions of our programming just to get them intro skills into tech. And then we'll likely pipeline them into our full scale programs later.
That's good. So what is that
Oh,
exactly? So what, these are young people who are starting out and you're trying to help them just get the basics?
Yep. Yep. Sure. So, across the country, you have many people who are recipients of the SNAP program. It was formerly known as a food stamp program.
Oh, okay.
And there
hmm,
are there are many people who are trying to level up from a workforce perspective. And so we've partnered with the state to offer a workforce development solution. And because of our partnership, recipients of SNAP are able to come through our program free of cost once they've been qualified, and they're able to go through condensed versions of the traditional programming that we offer to help them level up and get skills that will make them marketable in the marketplace in general.
Wait, that's really interesting. So what? So the government will kind of underwrite it with the
Correct.
idea that, hey, this is money well spent. If we're gonna,
Yep.
invest in, you know, this young woman or man to kind of learn data analytics, cybersecurity, it's a long-term
Hmm.
investment in the person in the future of the country because, you're gonna have more people who are in the
Yep.
digital, age.
Yep.
That's really wild. So like how much can that scale? Like how big can
Yeah.
that go?
Massive scale because SNAP is a federal program. It's a federal entitlement benefits program. And our goal is to essentially have these partnerships across all 50 states. Right now, we're piloting this within the state of Tennessee and just working with the agency in terms of qualifying individuals. And then we're also onboarding individuals. This is a pilot program for us. So we're working out the kinks. But once we're able to do so, we believe it has huge scalability for us as a
Wow.
business, but also huge community impact because, again, traditionally, people that have been on food stamps have remained in their same economic standing over time.
Hmm.
The goal with what we're doing is to position people where they don't need SNAP benefits in the future by giving them tech skills and helping them achieve those career opportunities where they can earn more income.
That's amazing. Now,
Now, is
are
this
these people, do they have high school degrees or not even, or how is this?
We're seeing a lot of GED candidates, folks
Okay.
that have completed GED, some high school degreed people as well, even college degreed people who may have fallen into financial hardship. So, I think there's a wide array of different types of people that are recipients of SNAP benefits. And so, our goal is to help as many people in the SNAP program get into tech if they're interested in a career in that industry.
mm, so just give it if you could. You don't have to give names or anything. Could you give us a couple
Mm,
of examples, a couple of stories of people who have made that transition? Especially, I think people want to hear how do people get out of poverty, in
sure,
essentially,
sure.
and be able to make a rise and have made a better pathway for themselves.
Yeah, sure. I can't speak to specific success stories yet because we just launched this program. Uh,
Okay.
this is
Okay.
even news to Jack because our last
Yeah, I'm
conversation
excited.
with him, this
Yeah.
wasn't on the table yet. But we have gone through orientation and we've onboarded several individuals that are just getting started. But I can speak to just some of our prior students in our traditional program tracks. We were featured in the news locally a year ago because an individual by the name of Nick Oldham was a bus driver in a metro bus system, came through pivot programming and was able to get essentially a data focused job within the transportation system. That's just a great story of economic mobility. We see our work as not just equipping people to go into tech and helping diversify tech, but we're also helping
Mhm.
close the racial wealth gap because we're giving people from diverse backgrounds opportunities to sometimes double, maybe even triple their income.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. That's great to hear because I know I write about that every now and then, and
Okay.
that a pipeline is definitely needed for that community because very often they're very underfunded and don't get that government money and don't get the accelerated money, and therefore they can't really mobilize and spread like they can.
Yep.
Isaac, does the government help with jobs too? Like maybe get a civil servant job?
You
You
know
know?
what? The conversations that we've had have been about workforce development and
Mhm.
what's happening specifically within the state of Tennessee. Our economic and community development department at the state level is doing a great job of recruiting companies here. But when companies are coming to Nashville, what they're saying is, we love being in Tennessee, but we're still having to hire outside of the state to meet our
Interesting.
tech demand. And
Wow.
so
Hmm.
programs like this are supporting the state's recruitment efforts because we're developing talent within the state and we're helping equip the workforce in a way where these companies such as Oracle and Amazon that are coming to town can find talent locally. And we think that that's always a great story when companies
Yeah.
come, but they're also hiring here versus having to hire outside of Nashville or Middle Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we got one comment from Marty Constant, who's
Mhm.
works with the idea of the future of work, and she thinks it's a great idea that government should invest something into young talent coming on. I didn't get a chance to read her whole comment, but I think people can galvanize and get behind something like this, especially companies that are up and coming themselves and
Sure.
can automatically tap into young talent and especially young talent of color to be able to start building and at least to make them a part of that community, so that there are more resources within the community and for the whole state.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree. Great point there. You know, we are seeing this as an initiative where the state of Tennessee is investing in its own citizens and its own residents and creating that talent within the state. And I think this is a model that can be replicated across the country, and we're wanting to help be pioneers in that regard.
You know
Mhm.
what I'm hearing with this? You need a guy who has a lot of recruiting experience and
Yep.
knows how to recruit people, place people, and to offer a little diversity to your team.
Of
So
course, of course.
I think
There's
I
a true
know somebody
partnership.
who's
Well, look, we just had our team just had this conversation
yeah.
yesterday, Jack. So we'll be circling back to you.
Yeah, I want in, man. This sounds huge. This could be big because can I tell you, I've been writing a lot about like all these companies. Like what I'm seeing now, right? I'm speaking to so many of these executives, and not that they want to speak to me, but they want to be profiled and tell what they're doing. So, and it's so hard for them to find talent, no matter what company.
Yep.
It's incredibly hard. They're actually a lot of these big companies now. They're just trying to get remote workers. And before what happened with the invasion in either
In
Ukraine and
Ukraine.
Poland and in the Middle East and Africa and you name a place, because they're just desperate for people. But they would rather have people from the U.S. because also with the time zone difference, to have the person who could go into the office. So that where you're in, that's the sweet spot. They want this tech, they need the tech talent, but it's so hard for them to find.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. You know, this challenge is not unique to this day and time. When I started my engineering career at IBM in 2006, companies were struggling to find tech talent, and we were leaning heavy on H-1B visas to fill these
Yeah.
roles. I worked with a lot
Mhm.
of individuals from Asia, Africa, Europe, South America who were brought into the United States to help fill the need for our tech demand. We likely should have been making these types of investments 10, 15 years ago. So I'm happy to see that happening now, because 10 years from now, we won't necessarily have to rely so much on bringing people from outside of our country.
Yeah.
We can empower American citizens right here at home to fill these tech jobs.
Mhm. So, as a key point to maybe for somebody who's looking to transfer, might be interested in your program or programs like yours,
Mhm.
you're teaching them the very basic one-on-one so far, and then you sound like you're going to have an advanced program. But those who are getting the one-on-one basic tech skills, do you anticipate them also having to? You have to also help them with their mindset that they will also be learning a whole lot more when they get
Very much
to
so.
get a
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
and that they'll have, in maybe some cases, maybe retrain everything you taught them, uh, just so that just so that you can have some realistic expectations of those who are listening and may wonder what does that look like.
Yeah, Mark, you make a great point. You know, individuals that come through this program that we're talking about and getting entry level skills, they'll be marketable from a job perspective. But we know that career growth and career transition comes with training and development, right? And so we're
Mhm.
still going to be a partner that they can work with to gain additional tech skills to go after more, in-depth technical roles that our more advanced programs offer. People that go through our advanced programs are able to get into entry level software development roles, cyber and data analytics roles, which are paying 60, 70, 80K depending upon the job market. But if I'm a recipient who's on the SNAP program and I may have only been qualified to, gain opportunities that pay around the minimum wage, getting basic tech skills will allow me to level up just beyond where I am today, even if I'm not moving
Mhm.
into a entry level software dev role. Maybe doing something around being a business analyst is going to give me a lot more income and exposure to more opportunities. And so we're just looking at this as a long term solution to build a tech pipeline that looks very diverse. We're tired of companies coming to us and saying we can't find the tech talent when we know that there are strategies to cultivate and build the pipeline for that talent.
Mhm. Yeah, there is that. I call it the workplace remote war, because it seems like there's several different wars at different fronts. So we're talking about those who want to work remote and are having a hard time finding those tech jobs, and then
Hmm.
those who are, and really, I think where you're going to kind of be in between that war is that you're going to be trying to facilitate out, but you're also trying to have others to come in and to be a part and be known so that people can access that, because a lot of people just wonder, tell me where the remote jobs were and I'll leave you
Right.
alone. And that's probably where you're going to go, right?
You're 100% right. The remote job war is a real thing. Companies are feeling the talent crunch even more because employees are now empowered and they're saying, you know what, I like working here, but I don't want to come back into the office. I was at a conference in South Florida recently, and I met a young lady who she will go unnamed, but she's a LinkedIn employee, and she hired on at LinkedIn in San Francisco. She moved to Miami during the pandemic, and now they're asking everybody to come back to the office. And she told her leadership, I'm not coming back to the office. So either we're going to have to make this work, or I'm going to float my resume. And she's got an
Mm.
MBA from Duke. She can go to the next highest
Mm.
bidder. So I think the power dynamic has shifted, and companies are realizing, wow, we have to meet the talent where they are because this whole pandemic just changed the landscape.
That's interesting. You should mention LinkedIn, because I thought LinkedIn was one of the companies who announced last summer that, yeah, everybody could work remote. Sure,
Yeah,
you
that's
can
what I
work
thought
Yeah,
remote.
too.
yeah,
That it
yeah,
would,
I think it was LinkedIn was one of the
yeah.
companies, right?
But you know
I
what,
know
Mark?
Twitter had already said, look,
Yeah,
work forever. But LinkedIn,
right.
are they reneging now?
dude, it's
Okay.
Mark. It's interesting. So like over the pandemic, while a lot of these companies say remote work, stealthily, Google and these Facebook, now Meta, have been buying a lot of real estate. So I think all along they had in their back pocket, hey, we're gonna kind of bring people back. Apple
Yeah,
just wanted bringing people back. Microsoft.
yeah,
So it's hybrid for now, but then you wonder, do you start hybrid and then once they're there, you're like, okay, now we want you 4 days a week instead of three, and then it's 5 days a week.
exactly.
So it's going to
But
be
I
interesting how it plays
wonder
out.
though, but I wonder how this push to go back into city, because we know in the big cities, especially like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, they rely on that business in their area downtown.
Yeah.
So do they buy buildings in their area downtown, or do they buy property in the outliers where they do have more access to people like who Isaac is trying to serve, in the sense that,
Hmm.
like Amazon has some strategic places. They're not downtown. They're in the outlier places where in the urban areas or close to it, to where people can just, you have to go to that job. So I'd be interested on how that's going to all turn out.
If I had
Makes
to
you
guess,
wonder.
Mark, if I had to guess, Mark, I'd say probably a little bit of both. All the real estate was devalued during the pandemic, so they're snatching up this property. They may not even hold on to all this real estate. They may just flip it at some point. But I recently read about Google saying Bay Area employees will be back in office April 1st, and we
Yeah.
just heard President
Mm.
Biden encourage us to go back to work and fill these beautiful downtown areas. So I think that behind the scenes, there's a larger narrative being pushed that we're wanting people to get back into the office place, into the workplace. And we understand remote work, but you all have probably seen the stories of employees working three full-time jobs at the same time.
Yes,
And the
yes,
companies
and
know
you
what's going
can when
on.
you And you can, if you, I mean, it's been going on for a while now. Being that you're working from home, why not manage two jobs, especially if those jobs don't require you to wear a ankle bracelet to make sure that you're
Yeah.
staying in the same place. But all in
Yeah.
all, I think, yeah, it's viable that you can have two full-time remote jobs, maybe one that doesn't have the great benefits, and one that really has great benefits that kind of supports your means both ways. So absolutely, yeah, that is
Yeah.
the future. That is the
Isaac.
now, really. It's a,
Yeah.
go
Isaac,
ahead.
it's interesting what you're
Go ahead,
saying
Jeff.
because I'm seeing that here in New York, where the new Mayor Adams, he's been really pushing the companies, bringing them into his office and pushing the companies, say, we want you back, we want you to get your people back. And I respect him because he's being honest. And by the way, I think he's a fellow Guyanese as yourself, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is that where
Oh
you're
wow,
from, Isaac?
okay. Okay. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. I have to go
yeah.
back and take
I
a
didn't
look
know
Check it
at
out.
that
I'm
that.
pretty
either.
sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah, okay.
and so and he's what I like what he's doing. He's being upfront about it. He's basically saying, "Hey, if you don't go back, what's going to happen?" And in New York, like a lot of other big cities, there's a lot of crime, a lot of violence, a lot of drug uses, out in the streets. People aren't feeling safe, and he realizes if people don't come back and commute, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And then what happens to that whole ecosystem of the local barbers, nail salons, bars, restaurants? They'll all just fall apart, the pizzerias, and all of a sudden, people lost thousands of jobs. So I think that's the subtle thing that isn't really reported, where the politicians are kind of freaking out, like, "Oh, wait, if we don't get people back, we could just all these places that which was just a hanging on because of the pandemic, they were just barely hanging on, will just be destroyed." So
Jackie, you're
it's
100% right.
yeah,
And I think in any situation, follow the money.
yeah.
And so, to your point, yes, the economic impact of this is huge. If we don't have folks in the office, those lunch restaurants that we all crowd, they're not being patronized. And, you know, that money flows back politically in some ways as well, in addition to economically. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happening behind the
Yeah.
scenes.
Is that in
Yeah.
Chicago,
Yeah.
Mark? Is that happening? Are they also Lori Lightfoot
Chicago, it
pushing for
is.
it?
Yeah, Lori Lightfoot's pushing forward, and probably she hasn't made as well. She's made really making as much noise as Eric Adams is,
Yeah.
but I think Eric Adams is kind of also playing Chicago in the sense that, well, don't be like Chicago. It's like, oh, we're going to have that kind of war now,
Well, you know what he was
but
doing, Mark, too? He was saying,
you
like, "Oh, we want the parades back," because everything was canceled during the pandemic. He was like, "I want everyone, all
know.
the parades. I don't care what it's for." And he said, "And if, any bureaucrats give a hard time for a parade, let me know. I'm gonna get it." Because he gets it that if you have more people out there and people are having fun and enjoying themselves, then you see the city having a renaissance. Like, what's happening in Tennessee, in Nashville? I mean, is that I think they
Well,
did okay, right? Or
Tennessee
no?
did okay, but our
Yeah,
governor is a business person,
yeah.
and so he never wanted us to really even close down from a business
Ooh.
perspective. And the moment that things felt safe to open back up, he posted a picture on his Instagram of him downtown having a beer at a bar without a mask, just basically
Of course he
signaling to
did.
folks that Tennessee is open for business. And so that's how it's been here. And I think the business community really spoke loudly and said, if we close, we may be closed for good. So what can you do for us? And so that was the sentiment
Well,
here.
Well, one of the cities in the United States that has reaped the benefits of the tech boom has been Nashville because everybody
Yes.
goes. It's kind of like a larger. It's like a larger Delaware in a sense where people do Delaware incorporations that people go to Nashville to conduct business, especially new entrepreneurs, young ones. They have a new social scene over the past 10 years that have been booming.
Yeah.
I know some people personally who've gone to Nashville just because of just to be around the big business stars, not so much the Hollywood stars, but that's the reason why they go.
How do
in
you know that's
addition
interesting?
to the in addition to no state income tax here. It used
Right.
to be low cost of living, but not anymore. It's just pretty up there. It's close to Austin now, but it's a state capital, major airport, direct flights to London through British Airways, major universities. There's so many pluses to Nashville. It's not a hard sell. So we've had investment banks like Alliance Bernstein from New York relocate their
Mhm.
operations team here, and it's taken off. It's taken off.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you want to leave us with? I know you have a hard stop at
Oh
some
yeah,
particular
yeah,
point,
sure, sure.
and
One thing Jack and I mentioned, and I'll just kind of talk about this with my
Yeah.
background being in tech and academics, and now I'm in a startup space. I recently published a book to empower Black men that look like me, but also just people in general who are trying to find their way through their career. I changed careers a couple of times, and I had challenges trying to adjust and figure out what the next move was. And so a lot of that is captured in my book. And Jack and I had a preliminary conversation about that. But if you're a person that's out there in the world and you're trying to find your way, don't be afraid to pivot. And if you want to pivot into tech, send us a message and we'll get you connected. But if not, just embrace that change and move forward. I think the pandemic told us that you can do whatever you want. You just got to be comfortable and, be willing to adjust and create the opportunities for yourself, because the world is a very different place now. We don't all have to be boxed in the way we used to be.
That's the truth. And the name of your book,
Oh, it's called Black Boy Fly.
Black Boy Fly, and people can find it at Amazon and other locations, I imagine.
Correct. Amazon as well as blackboyfly.club online.
Great, great. Well, we thank you very much for joining us, Jack. Did you want to insert
It's all
anything else?
good. Yeah. So I know you had time. You could feel free to stay until you have to go, whatever you want to do. So,
Oh, I
and
got
if you
2 more
want to,
minutes and then I'll
all
jump to
right.
my
So,
next call.
and then you can just head out. That's
We got
cool. So you can
2
hang out, and then when
minutes.
you're ready to go, no worries.
Yes.
Okay, that's great because we definitely and we feel free to chime in as we
Yeah.
talk about several things.
Oh,
We're
maybe we
going
could
to hit
talk
them real
about the
quick, probably.
better.com before he heads out, because that's a wild story. I don't know if you
Yes, let's talk about the
before he heads
better.com
out.
since that's the hot one right now. But yep, I think everybody knows the story now that people got paid before they were told that it was severance and that you're not going to have a job anymore. And this is a continuing saga of how bad your management can get. It seems like because we know that last November, December, the CEO decided to use Zoom and the possibility of a recording getting out that to 900 employees. Oh, if you're on the call, you're going to be fired. Now it's we gave you money, now get lost. So I'm making light a little bit of this, but people are really, it's really, this time it's 3,000 and there's 3,000 of the 8,000 employees that they have. So we're talking about more than a third of their workforce. So, Jack, I'm going to
Yeah.
start with you and giving your take. And
Yeah.
you did a whole thing on Forbes this morning regarding
Yeah.
that because I had sent you a message late last night,
Yeah.
and you're like I'm on it. So that was good. So
It's
go ahead
so
and share
it's so
some of
wild,
this
Isaac.
article.
So this guy, right? One of these lots of venture capital thrown at it to make mortgages better, I guess, or tech friendly. And yeah, in a Zoom call, tone deaf, says basically you guys were all fired and no empathy, nothing. Then he follows up a little later on in an email trying to, you know, ingratiate himself and make himself look better, but couldn't help himself. And he started calling these people you dumb dolphins, which I've never heard of that as a slight. I don't know what the heck that means. I thought dolphins were smart, but anyway, call them dumb dolphins and accusing them of stealing from him, but not money, time, because I guess he felt they weren't working hard enough for long enough hours. And again, tone deaf. And then they had some major executives quit because they're mortified. Fast forward, as Mark said, till now, he had to let a whole bunch of people go, but didn't get the messaging right. So I guess they had severance set up for people. So what happened before they even knew they were fired? They see in their bank account, wait, what's this? What's going on? And
Wow.
in a way, it was good that they paid severance. So kudos for that. But they didn't even tell them. They found out that way. So it's in today's world where it's a war for talent, great resignation, you're trying to kind of really take care of your employees, it just sticks out like such a sore thumb. And it's just mind boggling. And this is a company that had, probably $1 billion+ valuation and just gobs of
Yeah,
money thrown
pretty
at it.
close.
And I don't understand how they could how there could be no grown-ups in the room to really watch over it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
met
TechCrunch had
somebody.
902.
Not. Oh
No, I
wow.
was going to say
It's
Tech.
fun.
No, I was going. Go ahead. Go ahead, Isaac. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mm.
It was funny because when that story came out the month before, I was at a wedding and I met someone that works at Better, and we were
Oh
talking
yeah.
about this. Yeah, yeah, we literally were talking about the company, just about the CEO specifically.
Yeah.
And when the news came out, I texted the person and they never responded. I figured they probably were impacted by this,
Yeah.
but I was totally blown away. To me, that was unprecedented just in the business landscape. And I don't know what the guy was thinking, but it was really in poor taste.
Yeah, totally in poor taste. By the way, the valuation of TechCrunch is $902 million, which is
Wow,
doggone close.
almost
Considering
unicorn
considering that the
status.
C considering
Mm.
that the CEO received a $25 million bonus before everything blew up, and that they also had investors give $750 million. in the fall. So all that to say that all these things are coming on the back of supposedly money makes things a little bit better. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
I guess you
Maybe
know what it is?
we
You
gotta,
probably have to, you know what it is? They probably have to save their initial investment, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they invested X
Yeah.
amount. Let's say all of us were investors and we're like, oh my God, this is disaster. But if we don't do anything, we're going to lose the
Right.
millions we already gave. So it's like, all right, let's just pony up. What else could go wrong? And then, oh no, another one.
Oh man.
yes, I know. And it's a shame because these are people's lives. This isn't,
Yeah.
and they're thinking, I don't know how was the severance fair or not.
Yeah, I
Nobody
don't know.
said how fair
What it was. Yeah.
or if yeah. So that will be another interesting discussion. We'll probably have to re-enter
Yeah.
next week, Jack. But I really
Awesome.
believe that there is something to be said about people's apprehension to go to companies that are kind of swimming in money because there might be more of a sense of entitlement. And what
Right.
message are you sending employees? I mean, especially overall, because people are looking at that said, "Are you going to treat me that way?" And they're going
Yep.
to research and they're going to find how not just if it's a great job, but how do you treat the employees and how fairly do you treat the employees? And if you don't have that history, which now is going to be documented by every single employee, not just Glassdoor, they're going to post it on Twitter to make sure they get the full exposure and make everybody know, hey, I work for a lousy company, don't work for them. And that's what all that's going to say.
Crazy.
Well, before
Yeah,
I sign off here, last thing I'll say is that the world is paying attention, but investors are paying attention. And CEOs
yeah.
usually go from one company to another, and they have those VC networks where they raise capital and things like that. I think the CEO is going to have a challenge with what happens after this particular role because people don't have
Yeah.
short term memory about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. In
Thank
fact,
you guys for having me,
you
man.
can
This is
Google
this
it.
is awesome.
No, I'm glad you got this is great,
Yeah,
man, because you're doing great work and we love bringing on people like you who have something
Thank
really
you.
good to say,
Thank you.
something
absolutely.
positive.
Hey, I'd love to come
Excellent.
on in the
Absolutely.
future, and I'll
Okay.
definitely be in touch with you both.
Absolutely. Take
Well,
care, my
we like
friend.
it. Yes, absolutely. Take care.
Take
All
care,
right,
guys.
take care.
So,
Bye-bye.
yeah, Jack, that this is saying a lot about our workplace and how things are continuing to change, that it is not just people's imagination that, they're getting bad treatment from companies. We're seeing in real time that people are getting bad treatment from the companies. And I'm not saying all companies, but people are apprehensive about work and where they work and how they work, and they really care as much investment as getting the education to do what they do.
Yeah. Do you think what happens sometimes with these companies that they throw so much money at them and they're trying to do something things so quickly to just give the other side of the story that they just don't have the infrastructure in place, they don't have the policies in place, the procedures in place, maybe the right people in place. So you have these kind of blow ups. I wonder if that's kind of what happens.
I wonder, it is kind of not an excuse when your monetary resources are plentiful, not to to cover every corner of your
Yeah.
business. I mean, wouldn't you think if somebody gave you $902 million that you would have an HR person in there to kind of run
Right.
interference somewhere or
Right.
to kind of regulate, say, you be quiet, I'll do the talking.
Right.
Or just people who are co-founders or on the advisory board would say, you know what, you could be CEO, but you need to be very, very quiet. Because this thing could jump off any second if you get in front of people. I mean, you would think that you have at least the minimal resources for that, right?
It's 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 surprising, right? You would think now you could understand almost if let's say you and I started something and we have just a bare bones budget and we
Yeah,
can't afford a lot of these things, well then you could see how this would happen. Like, okay, they just don't have the money to hire the talent they need and they're just trying to juggle everything and they can't do it. But here, yeah,
right.
when you have like $900 million, that's a fair amount of money to hire a
You,
couple of
you,
HR
you
people, you know?
you can have You can have a CHRO person to
Yeah,
do, and
yeah,
maybe hire somebody just to talk.
yeah,
Say, we
yeah.
don't need you anything but to
Right.
listen.
CEO,
But
don't say anything. We'll do it.
that's right. Hire lawyers. Lawyers are
Yeah,
good at kind of curtailing the message.
yeah,
Hire lawyers,
yeah,
but don't go and just, do anything. And this time it wasn't particularly what he said, but
yeah,
not everything was covered. So it's like, really?
yeah,
Really? So, just because a company has a lot of money don't doesn't mean that they'll do it right. So I guess maybe that's the overall thing we're supposed to learn.
yeah.
So who knows, right? So let's talk a little bit about March job report, and I know you're on top of this as well. That 3.8 overall unemployment, and it's the lowest it's been for many years now. So, what do you think that's going to mean for people in the job search, and where should they load up and where should they unload?
Yeah. I'm so sus about all the numbers. I don't. I'm at the point I don't know how accurate or not. So I kind of look at it as almost a gauge,
Hmm.
where even if it's not perfect, it kind of leads you to a certain direction. So it does seem that while people worried about Omicron, and the report came before the invasion to the Ukraine, but so
Hmm.
there's concerns like, hey, it's not, things aren't going to bounce back. But it looks positive. It looks like, a lot of jobs were filled. There's still a lot of jobs opening. I think Marty posted something
Yep.
where what'd she say, that 4 million people have just what did she write again? That,
Let's see. Let me
oh,
find it.
another 4 million.
Uh,
So there's a churn, like she was saying, like about 4 million leavers. So it's on one hand, you see a lot of new people starting jobs, but then you see that churn where people are quick to leave. But when they leave, it's weird. Like the narrative almost makes it like you quit and you're going to just sit home on the couch and watch TV. But no, you just quit to find something better. So you're saying, hey, I don't like this job. I want to leave, better.com because, they didn't treat people well, but I'm not going to just sit home. Now I'm going to find a better job. No pun intended, where, I'm making more money. I have a better boss. I have a better future, and things like that.
right.
So it's positive. I think things are good. The market looks strong. There's a lot of new jobs within the leisure and hospitality area, the frontline workers. So
Hmm.
there's tons. It's almost like barbells. I think we talked about this before, where there's a huge need for tech, like Isaac was saying, like an insatiable amount for tech. There's also an
Hmm.
insatiable amount for frontline workers, restaurant workers, bar workers, all those kind of folks. And in the middle with the white collar, there's still needs, but I don't think it's as hot as some of the other areas. Um, but net,
Well,
it's
depending
positive.
upon who you talk to. Yeah,
Yeah,
depending upon who you talk to,
yeah.
it's gonna whether they consider hot jobs or not. I know there's still there are hundreds of thousands of tech jobs that are still available, and you just kind of wonder, I'm waiting for somebody who says, "Well, we can't find talent," and we're going to go, "What?" Because usually when it gets this low, and that there are companies that are not hiring diverse, they're not looking at the disadvantage and what they can build there. Uh, these are opportunities where you're seeing that there's a chasm between the amount of people who need work and a lot of jobs that are open, that there still needs to be some education in them, because still we have college students that are about to come out who are probably not counted amongst those who are
Yeah.
unemployed in some cases, although we can argue that that there is going to be that need that people will have for that kind of talent, but they're not reaching all the way down, is what I'm saying. So really, I think 3.8 is not telling the complete stories. I mean, we also can't forget too that there are baby boomers who left the market early to do retirement, and some of them have decided not to come back. There's some of them I'm sure are looking at it, said maybe there's a chance I could do this one more time. So I think there's that part of the 3.8 that we're not counting, not to mention the gross amount of underemployment that we have in this country and continue to have in this country. And I think that's a pandemic within itself.
Yeah. When Isaac was talking about the training, that's a big trend that I see with the upskilling. that
Mhm.
so many organizations are turning towards, these boot camps, or they offer it
Mhm.
internally to upskill people
Yeah.
because they realize they can't find the talent. So if they can't find the talent, then they're just going to have to train people how to do it. And that's one big trend. So like if you're in a company and you like the company but you feel stuck, you might want to ask your
Mhm.
boss, like, hey, is there a program that I could participate? And let's say you're interested in cybersecurity or data analytics or what have you, to bring it up,
Right.
because
Yeah.
they don't want to lose you, because if you leave, they know it's going to be really hard to find a replacement. They'll probably have to pay more money for the replacement. It'll take months. So they may say, yeah, we like Mark. He's really good. And if you want to stay and want to learn something, yeah, let's see how we can make that happen. So
Yeah.
that's an
Yeah.
interesting trend.
I like the idea that some educators are in some education sectors and a lot of private educated sectors are starting to think more about a pipeline between those who get out of school and to their workplace and train them from that point on up.
Yeah.
Uh, it would be interesting to see how that will develop and spread throughout time because I can see that being really big if there is a real gap. And I'm not saying the gap doesn't exist now, but I'm saying that should it become a larger part of really having some critical needs that might even have to do with national security, in essence, that maybe that's not a risk, won't be a risk more, but it'll be more of a way to invest in future at the same time, filling those needs that might be critical to the nation's running. So I think we're going to be looking at that a little bit more here in the future. Did you want to add anything regarding the
Yeah, that's
jobs
good.
report? No, okay, all right. So the workplace remote war we talked about, I think, almost ad nauseum in a sense. But I think there's a sense, though, that people are going to look at how much, and I know you talked a little bit about this, about burnout and how people can start to reclaim or to re-energize really from feeling the burnout because a lot of people have taken on extra responsibility because of all these job gaps. So, in your view, and out of all the reports that you've done, what are some ways that people can kind of to help them with that, to help them move forward with burnout and be able to be functional in the workplace again?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think it's kind of almost an epidemic now, where we
Hmm.
spent 2 years in a pandemic, and not only pandemic, but think about it, COVID, and then it looked for a time we're done, and then you had Delta, and
Hmm.
you're like, oh, and then we're almost done with Delta. Then we have Omicron. Then you do
Yeah.
Omicron, and now you have maybe World War III, and it just wrecks your psyche. It messes you up, and you know we all know
Hmm.
that during the pandemic, we've all been working crazy hours. Some because we were
Yeah.
afraid that we would lose our jobs, so we're working hard to show, like, "Hey,
Hmm.
I'm working, boss. Don't fire me." Others
Right.
that you're trying to be safe and not spread the disease, so you're being careful. So you're just at home, so you're like, "All right, I might as well keep working." And
Right.
so you end up being really stressed, anxious, fearful, and it's easy to get burnt out. And I think what happens, a couple of things is, um, one of the first things to do is you just want to kind of judge and see how, if you're kind of snapping at people, if you're feeling cranky, if
Hmm.
you're feeling ornery, if you're feeling always tired, if you're like lethargic, if you just don't have any interest in things, if you have just a hard time doing something, these are some of
Hmm.
the signs that, like, hey, maybe I should get some help. And we're in a different world now. When Mark and I were younger,
Yeah.
you know, you wouldn't say, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go to a therapist," or "I'm gonna seek help." It just wasn't really a thing. Now
Hmm.
now it's completely socially acceptable. So I would reach out, to somebody, to a professional, to say, "Hey, I just wanna talk and see, am I burnt out, or do I have any issues, or how I can resolve things, how I can get, feel better." But then I think it's a lot of going back to basics. Like, you wanna make sure that you're eating healthily, you're not drinking too much, you're not, using too much, either legal or illegal drugs and abusing drugs. You wanna make sure that you're getting a normal sleep. cycle. You want to make sure that you're exercising, you're taking care of yourself. I know it sounds obvious, but sometimes the
Hmm.
answers are really straightforward. And you look for a magic pill, but it really is kind of getting back to basics to just to make sure you're mentally and emotionally, spiritually fit. You want to kind of start reaching out to people because there's a loneliness epidemic too, and from being isolated for so long. People have lost
Yes,
their
sir.
networks, so you have to start, and it's not easy to kind of rekindle relationships. Get in front of people, start socializing, get in touch with people because it'll make you feel better. So I think
Hmm.
you really have to have a whole set of things to do. It's not going to be turning on a switch and you're going to feel better. And it's not going to happen overnight either. But I think also if it makes you, people who are watching this now and later, on social media, it's across the board. A lot of people still don't want to talk about it, but
Right.
it's an epidemic. And proof of this is the pudding. Think about it. No matter where you go, everybody's angry and yelling at each other and arguing. That's kind of shows that we're all on our wits' end. So it's really common. And the longer you don't take action, the worse you're going to feel.
Yeah, and I think people are still afraid of the conversation that surrounded
Yeah.
um, mental health for years, and that's why some people don't talk about it because they don't want to be remembered as that guy who has a head case. And I know that's it's always been harsh treatment and
Yeah.
criticism and avoidance of those. And because somebody has a crisis or seemingly has the crisis, I think everybody's experienced it in one way or another. There's just some people have managed to suffer very
Yeah.
silently, but eventually it does come out in some kind of way. If you want to, there's still managers and there's still people in authority who feel like the old adage of if you squeeze, the only way to find out if the orange is good is by squeezing it and to see what the juice tastes like. That's their way of trying to get people to respond to the work as opposed to caring about the person and the person always feeling like they're being squeezed already. So I think, yeah, I think people are still afraid to have that discussion and they want to be in safe places where they can. And
Yeah.
being at home is one way for people to kind of
Yeah.
mitigate the pressures of work and also many times the pressures of home too.
The cool thing is that have noticed, we talked about this a bit, where companies are understanding and trying to be much more empathetic so that
Hmm.
they're offering all sorts of different apps and, to help with mental health, giving,
Hmm.
helping out, paying for gym memberships, going to yoga,
Right.
fitness centers, um, closing down for a week, as you talked about, Mark, at the beginning of the conversation today, like closing down for
Right.
a week where this means everybody could just disconnect. You don't have to feel guilty that you're not going on Slack or
Hmm.
sending texts or getting texts or emails. So
Right.
that's interesting that the companies are getting the fact that they need to take care of people and offer these benefits to help them out and help with their mental health and emotional well-being.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're trying to play a part. Companies I understand can do so much, but there are companies who don't make those services widely known. It's
Yeah.
only known to certain folks, and that's kind of defeating the purpose of having the benefit. And I understand there are all kind of dynamics that go along with it, but the truth is anybody can have a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And sometimes it almost takes a CEO to say, I have a mental health crisis to make it okay for
Yeah.
people to come forward to it and say that I have one too, unfortunately. And of course, the CEO is also risking a future because still the rest of the world is not
Yeah.
doing that. So he's thinking about his future. So, I know executives who have mental health, and I know some that have even sent me messages throughout the past few years I've been talking about it because I wrote an article where I said that mental health, the new dental health in a sense, is that people know that it kind of exists, but don't really want to talk about it, do it because it's a very hard process to go through for them. For some people, it's easy, but to sit down and talk about admitting you have some issues from childhood,
Yeah.
that's very hard to do. It is kind of like pulling teeth in essence.
Yeah. That'd be a good point if they could do that. Just say, "Hey, listen, this is what I'm going through. I'm gonna take the week off. I need to recuperate, get my head together, and
Yeah,
lead by doing that." Which, but I hear what you're saying. Then it's, do you then say, "Huh, that's that CEO. What's really
it's a,
going
it's a,
on?
it's
What's?"
still a double-edged sword, and
Yeah,
somebody's gotta tip it over,
yeah,
to make it okay that everybody can do it, not just those who can quietly do it and afford to be away
yeah,
from work. There are times when too there are people who work the lower wage jobs that don't have that benefit accessible. They might be able to have some days off and maybe a week, but a lot of times a week isn't going to be enough to deal with uh, some forms of trauma that happen in life. And so if only, eh, I mean, I know everybody's trying to keep the government out of the business, but my argument is, so your employer's in your business anyway. You might as well, somebody's got to make it a better pathway for that to be fixed. As you said, it's an epidemic or is it a pandemic? But one of those two in our country that mental
yeah,
health has gone uncared for and make it okay to talk about and to take care of those needs. So that's something. So we're coming to the top of the
yeah,
hour. Fantastic show, especially with Isaac. Thanks,
yeah,
Isaac, for coming on. Yeah, we're going to call you back to come on again, give us an update what's going on here.
yeah.
What
I'm
do you
good.
got going on?
Yeah, I'm really curious how that's going to work because that sounds like a really good program to teach
Yeah,
young
it
people how
does.
to. Yeah,
To code, and there are a lot of other organizations that do, but I think the interesting way he's gone about it and has established already a
yeah,
kind of a lock in with the government giving something that kind of
yeah,
very often that kind of is the gateway for other people to invest
definitely.
in those kind of programs. So
Yeah.
what you got coming up next? You got anything coming up next?
I've been just, writing a lot because there's just so much stuff going on,
Yeah,
which
there is.
is, it makes it fun. It's interesting. And a lot of it's good things, a lot of, you know, people who are like Isaac, building cool companies and trying to help people out. Um,
Hmm.
so, a lot of new initiatives that companies are doing to empower their employees. So,
Right.
yeah, it's the only thing that I get concerned of, and we mentioned this last week, is with Russia invading Ukraine, that you got to worry if it spills over and it takes in other countries, all the gains we've made, you got to worry, is that going to all kind of evaporate? But I'm going to be thinking positive that hopefully
Yeah.
cooler heads will
Yeah.
prevail. We'll take care of it, and then we just keep moving forward.
Yeah, yep. I think every little bit of news
Yeah,
it seems to be perceived as
yeah,
cracks in the armor,
yeah,
but we don't know that yet. So in a lot of ways, we're secretly holding our breath to see
yeah.
what else is going on. So yeah, great article for the better.com again, Jack, for Forbes. I've got let's see, Reading in Color podcast. I have an interview on there
Cool.
that I was interviewed by Sarah Morgan, a friend of mine, an HR executive with Human Reso, I think is the company that she works for. But great interview. Feel free to chime in. I'll be
Cool.
sharing that here shortly, as well as some other things I'll have on Lenza.com coming up. Some an article particularly I'm working on should be interesting to see how people react to it. But in the meantime,
Excellent.
thank the rest of you for
Cool.
coming out and joining us. Thank you, Marty, for your comments. We're going to have Marty back on here real soon to
Absolutely.
talk.
Excellent.
In fact, I'll probably be sending her a message this weekend.
Sounds great.
Big shout out to everybody who is working hard to helping people find careers and find their way through this jungle. In the meantime, you've been listening to Job Seeker Nation. We're here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. We'll be back here next Wednesday. Join me on Friday, the Modern Job Search Checklist with Damian Burkle and myself and Rona Barrett Pierce. I believe I have that right.
Cool.
Join us. She's a LinkedIn voice for 2022.
Nice. All right, great.
Yeah, so it'll be a great show talking about personal branding. In the
Excellent.
meantime, peace in the valley of
Excellent.
love. See you guys next
Excellent.
week.